Hi everyone, Ed here from Bring Back the Memory. Welcome to our channel, and we're going to make another video on collecting stock and bond certificates. And today's subject is going to be collecting certificates from the mining industry. And we hope that you'll find it very interesting and enjoyable. The mining industry is actually the second most popular for certificates to collect. And I think you'll see why in this video. Okay. Now, a couple things I want to remind you of, and the first is that we're collecting for enjoyment and for investment. So for the investment part of it, you want to know what the certificates are worth. Just want to remind you that we have other videos, and two especially, one video that tells how to determine the value of a certificate, and the second video that shows different ways of finding out the value of the certificate, such as price guides, completed auctions, talking to dealers and things like that. So again, those videos are good. They're a couple years old, but they're really up-to-date information. So be sure to look at those, okay? All right, so in terms of the stock certificates and the bond certificates, so the first thing that we're going to talk about is a little bit of history of mining. And again, since we're two purposes, one is for enjoyment, I thought I would start this off by a little personal story, because hopefully you'll look at this and in collecting certificates and think of your own personal memories of different things, and that makes collecting more meaningful to you. So this goes back for me. I was born in New York City in the South Bronx in 1939, so yeah, pretty old. And living in the city, my mother and father both decided that my brother and I would probably be better off spending our summers away from the city. Now, my mother's family was a large family. She had a lot of brothers and sisters, and they all lived in Shenandoah, Pennsylvania. And so my mother and father both decided, and of course with the permission of our relatives out there, that my brother and I would spend the summers out in Pennsylvania. And so that's what we did. So the thing is, in Shenandoah, it was a coal mining town. It's right in the middle of Schuylkill County, Pennsylvania, and most of the towns there are coal mining towns, okay? Now, for me, I had two uncles that were coal miners, my Uncle Jim and my Uncle Johnny, and I really liked them a lot. I admired them. They were both good people, very hardworking, supported their families. And so I remember I was probably maybe 8 years old, talking to them and saying, you know, when I grow up, I want to be a coal miner just like you guys. And when they heard that, they both at the same time said, no, you don't want to be a coal miner. And they told me why I don't want to be a coal miner and what the conditions are in a mine and stuff like that. And so they convinced me, and I did not become a coal miner. So let me tell you a little bit about Shenandoah. Shenandoah was a great town. Okay, like I said, just about all the men who lived there were coal miners. And the people in Shenandoah were very, very nice. And a little bit about my family, we had a great family. And my grandmother, my Aunt Jenny, and my Aunt Bertha, they took really good care of my brother and myself. And boy, did they feed us good. They were great cooks. And remembering the food that we ate when we were kids, boy, just makes my mouth water. Now, we also had two cousins who were about our age, my cousin Frank and my cousin Jim, and we all got along great. We did a lot of things together. I just want to tell you a little bit about what it was like in a coal mining town. The thing about Shenandoah, they had a lot of bars. It seemed like there was at least one bar on just about every block. And so my cousin and myself, we had a shoe shine kit, and we used to go to the bars at night, and we would shine shoes for the miners, and we would charge $10 a shine, and they would pay us 10 cents a shine, and they would pay us 10 cents every time we shined someone's shoes and gave us a little tip. And so that was the way we raised money. Now the question is, what did we do with our money? Well, the thing about Shenandoah, in addition to having a lot of bars, they also had a lot of churches. Now, most of the people in towns, I would say, were Catholics, but there were also other churches. And the thing about Shenandoah was that the town gave each church a week that they could have a bazaar in the summer. And the bazaars were really great. They decorated a street and they set it up, and there were bingo games, there were rides, there were games to play, and there was really, really good food. You could smell the food for blocks, and that was how we spent our money. There were pierogies and potato blinis, kielbasa, and it's just so great. And so we had really a great time, and I just can't tell you enough about how much we enjoyed living in Shenandoah, in our little coal mining town, and spending our time with our relatives and our cousins. Okay, so that's my story, and hopefully each of you viewers have some kind of a story that you can connect, not only mining, but any of the other industries that we cover in collecting stock and bond certificates, okay? So now I'd like to talk a little bit about the history of mining. Now, mining has been around for forever, since history began. Even the ancient Greeks and the Egyptians, I mean, they did mining, they took minerals out of the earth, and they used the minerals for different things that they built. And same thing in the United States. The colonists came over and they did some mining, but they only used hand tools, so it really wasn't that big. It really wasn't until the 19th century that mining became a big industry in the United States. Now, one thing that's true is the United States is really blessed with a lot of natural resources and many different minerals throughout all of the states. So in the 19th century, that's when mining became prevalent in the country along with other industries. Now, there are two things to keep in mind, I think, with mining. And the first is individual mining. And the first thing that comes to mind is the gold rush. That took place in California in the 1840s when someone discovered gold out in California. Now, the thought of getting gold and having your own mine really inspired a lot of people. And so thousands and thousands of people flocked to California in hopes of getting rich and striking gold. Now, when they went out there, some of them went alone, some of them brought their families, and towns and cities sprung up because all of these new people came in and they needed places to live, they needed food, they needed provisions. So the people that provided those also came out there. And the story was that although some people struck gold and did become rich, there weren't really that many of them. And the people who did become rich were the people who did supply them with the things that they needed. And so eventually the gold rush disappeared, but the towns remained. Now most of them remained. There were a lot of natural resources, so farms sprung up, ranches, there was manufacturing, and the good towns stayed around. Well, some of the towns, there was really nothing to be said for them, and you know, you can read history and you can read about ghost towns, and those towns completely disappeared. And even today, apparently, there's a few ghost towns out west that you can go visit and see what it was like back then. And now, one more example of a gold rush took place in Alaska in the 1890s. And that was basically the same story. All these people flocked to Alaska, same thing. A few of them got rich, most of them didn't. But again, different towns and cities sprung up, and that helped build up Alaska a little bit. And eventually, the gold fever died down, and but it did do something. Now, along with individual mining, we talked about corporate mining, and this is where the stock and bond certificates come in. And so, stock and bond certificates in mining are very, very interesting. Number one, just think about it. If you're, let's say that part of the United States, you find that there's a big supply of copper that all of a sudden somebody discovers, and somebody decides that it would be very worthwhile to mine this copper and produce it because copper is very valuable and it can be used industrially. So what they would have to do, they'd have to raise money, and so they would incorporate, they would issue stock and bond certificates, and they would try to get investors. And if they were successful, they would build up their company, and of course as a collector, if you invested in their company, would receive your stocks, or if you lent money to them, you would get your bond certificate, okay? Now, again, remember one thing that I always say this in each of our videos, but it's very important. that these certificates that you're collecting, they've already been traded in, so you can't, you have possession of them, but you can't trade them in for currency. They've already been traded in. Their value is as a collectible. So they have a value, but it's as a collectible. So remember that, okay? So there are many different companies. They're all over the United States. The ones that were successful are still in business. The ones that were unsuccessful, they closed down. Now, maybe they closed down because the supply of minerals dried up and it didn't produce anymore, or maybe they were just unprofitable. Maybe they didn't run a good business, and even though the minerals they were looking for were there, but they just couldn't make a profit on it, so they closed down. So basically, that covers the history of mining up until the present. We still have quite a bit of mining that goes on in the country. I think another thing to keep in mind is that mining was a very dangerous profession. If you were a miner, there were a lot of accidents, there were explosions, and throughout history you can read about them. And so that meant that there was a lot of conflict between the miners themselves and the people who owned the companies. And that's where labor unions sprung up to help the miners to get the rights and to get the mines to be used more safely for the miners and, of course, for their families. Okay, so those are all really important things to consider. And again, when you collect certificates, you should keep those in mind. As far as the certificates themselves, the mining certificates are some of the most beautiful certificates in existence. The vignettes, pictures of mine scenes, are really, really nice. And we mentioned that one of the reasons people collect certificates are for the artwork and for the metallically engraved vignettes of the certificates, okay? And also, there are some certificates that are very rare. I mean, if a company was only in existence for a very short period of time, maybe only a few certificates remained, to be found, or in some cases, maybe none at all. So if you're collecting for rarity, you can certainly find a lot of stock certificates that meet that expectation. And also, the last thing is always be on the lookout when you're collecting certificates for signatures of famous people. There really aren't too many of those, but if you come across one, you'll have something that's worth quite a bit of money. So that basically takes care of the history of the mining, and we hope that you enjoyed this presentation. We're going to conclude by showing you some pictures of some of the mining stocks and bond certificates that we own, and hopefully this will, if you're already a collector, you'll want to collect some more. And if you're not a collector, you'd like to start by collecting some mining and stock certificates or certificates from other industries. Okay, well, thanks for watching, everybody. We're going to be making more videos in the future, and we hope you'll come back to our channel. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel, and hopefully we'll see you in the next video. Okay.